Okay, for this tutorial for Fractions 102, we are going to learn how to convert fractions to decimals, fractions to percentages, decimals to fractions, and vice versa. Because you know, fractions, decimals, and percentages, they are cousins. So you can convert them to each other, okay? So the textbook that I gave you shows different ways of doing it, okay? So what I'm just going to do is to show you maybe another way through the tutorial, okay? And I'm sure most of you already have your method. So this is just in case you forgot, okay? So let's start with fractions because we've been studying about fractions, okay? As you know, fractions like 1/2 is basically a division problem, okay? So when you see a fraction, you divide. And you know, when you divide a fraction, you will end up with a decimal. Okay? So if I do 1 divided by 2, okay? Since 1 is less than 2, I have to make it into a decimal. Add a 0, so 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10, 0. Okay? And you have been practicing that when we were studying about numbers. So, fractions, I can convert into a decimal by dividing. And we know 1/2 is 0.5. Okay? So, how do I convert a decimal into a percentage? Okay? All I need to do is to divide it by 100. 3, 2, 1. So all you need to do to change a decimal into a percentage is to multiply it by 100. That's it. Okay, and from the numbers unit, you know, if we multiply it by powers of 10, all you need to do is to count the number of zeros, and that's how many decimal places you will move the decimal point. So 0.5, 2 zeros, 1, 2. So the decimal point is now here. So 0.5 times 100 gives you 50. So 1/2 is equal to 0.5 is equal to 50%. Okay? That's it. So let me just resize this and so we can move. Now, how do we do the opposite? How do we do the opposite? Okay? So to do the opposite, we just have to reverse engineer. Okay? Let me move that over here. So now let's try 50%. Okay? So we have 50%. How do I make 50% back into a decimal? So if I multiplied it by 100, I need to divide it by 100. Okay? And from our numbers unit, we know when we divide by powers of 10, so you see there's 1, 2 zeros. So all you need to do is to move back the decimal point 1, 2 places to the left. To the left, okay? So this is now equal to 0.5. See, there's your decimal. So how do we change this back into a fraction? Okay? So this is what I tell my students. Just read the number. Okay? Just read the number. So this number or decimal is 5. And what is the place value? 5. And there's one decimal place. If you still have your place value table for decimals, look for it. 5/10. This is read as 5/10. So your decimal is 5/10. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it. Okay. Take this as the numerator, 5. And how many decimal places? 1. So that means you have 1 0 there. and this one is always 1. Okay? So you either read it as 5/10 if you know and remember your place value, or this becomes the numerator and you count how many digits after the decimal. 1. So that's 1 0. And the first digit is always 1. So you have 5/10. Okay? But wait, isn't our original fraction 1/2? So it's not equal. It's 5/10 1/2. Hold your horses, no problem, because this is not yet simplified. So you always need to simplify. Okay? So let's use our ladder. 5 and 10. What is the highest common factor? It's 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Okay? So there you go. Divided by 5 equals 1/2. Or, if you remember, see, 1/2. Okay? So you can see we track the progress from, okay, let's use pink. From fractions, we made it to decimals, and then we made it into percentage. And then from here, from percentage, we made it back into decimals, and then we made it back into fractions. So that's how you change fractions, decimals to percentages, and percentages to decimals to fractions. Okay? So what if I ask you, can you change this? Okay, let's use black. Can you change this 3/5? Can you make it into a percentage? What are you going to do? You have to make 3/5 a decimal first. Okay? So, fractions to decimals to percentages. So we make this into a decimal first. 3 divided by 5. Put your decimal point there. 30 divided by 5 is 6. 6 times 5 is 30. Okay? So, our fraction is 3/5. Our decimal is 0.6. And as we know, 0.6, to make it into a percentage, we multiply it by 100. How many decimal places? 1, 2. 1, 2. So this is equal to 60. Okay? And so our percentage is 60%. Okay? So what if I want to make a percentage into a fraction? What do? We know that percentages, if you want to make it back into a decimal, you divide it by 100, right? But look at this. 70 divided by 100 is already a fraction. Ooh. So what do? If there are zeros in the numerator and denominator, I can just cancel that. And what are you left with? 7/10. Okay, so 70% is equivalent to 7/10, which is a fraction. Okay? What if it's 650%? Oh no, what do? Same thing. 650 divided by 100. Okay? So now you see we can cancel this. This will leave you 65/10, which is what kind of fraction? Improper. Okay, so what do? 65/10 gives you 65 divided by 10, 60, okay, 5. So this as a fraction is 6 and 5/10. And then what do you do with this one? So 5 and 10, okay, common factor is 5, 1 and 2. So this becomes 1/2. So the final answer is 6.5. Okay, it becomes a mixed number. Okay, so hopefully this helps you solve 4.4. Okay, bye bye.